the same
link.
Yeah, unfortunately, my live stream shut down, so I'm just getting my assistant here to put up a new link to the new live stream, unfortunately. Go onto my YouTube account.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this one's live right now. You want to copy this link to
Chat, yeah.
the chat?
Yeah.
To the other chat?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, how's it going, everybody? It looks like my live stream dropped for some reason. I have bad internet reception at my own house, and apparently I have bad internet reception in the city, too. How unfortunate. Give me about 2 minutes to set back up here, and I'm just getting my assistant to send out a link in the chat. Hopefully it's still accessible. Yeah, I totally agree. It does need to have a resume stream button. That I don't know what the heck happened. It's like it just dropped, and I had to redo a new, make a new, entirely new stream. So, and I'm all tongue-tangulated right now too. The whole thing has got me worked up. Were you able to get it done?
Yeah, everything's good here.
Okay, perfect. Where was I? Was I still on the last question?
New
Or?
question you haven't answered yet.
Okay, so I think I finished the last question. So we'll go on to a new question.
How do you get good at explaining yourself?
Oh, okay. So somebody, who asked me that question? Because that's a wonderful question.
Robert Coiliston? Somebody from Twitter.
Somebody from Twitter named Robert asked me an incredibly good question, and that was, how do you get good at explaining yourself? And I actually wrote down a couple of notes on this one because I think that it's really important. Okay, so how do you get good at explaining yourself? There's three main things that I like to focus on. There are many others that you can focus on as well, but the three main things that I like to focus on is, number one, expect that you're going to be wrong. You're always going to be wrong. Well, you're not always going to be wrong, but you have to expect that once in a while you are going to be wrong about any number of things. Even if you think that you're an expert on that issue, on that subject, you're going to be wrong. So you have to be able to accept that you can be wrong. One of the main things that I do in this channel, one of the things that I do more than I think most other people, is accept and acknowledge that I make mistakes. I make mistakes all of the time because I'm human. And, you know, that's just the way everybody is. And I think that the best way for us to go about having other people understand us is to first understand ourselves and to first know that we can be wrong. And when we are wrong, accept when we are wrong and be able to learn, be a sponge, be willing to take in new information, and be willing to change your mind about things. Being skeptical is incredibly important, but also being able to listen to other people's opinions and having an open mind is incredibly important. And that actually has to do, see, the interesting thing is about explaining yourself, being better at explaining yourself, which I'm doing terribly right now. The most important thing about that is it isn't necessarily about you, it's about you understanding the other person. So a lot of times whenever you have a conversation with somebody, you'll notice that that person is really itching and just waiting to say something because they're not actually listening to what you're saying. They're just waiting for their turn to talk. And that's no way for you to actually be able to engage with somebody and actually be able to explain anything to them, because if you're not willing to listen to them, they're never going to be willing to listen to you. So you can't just be the one waiting to tell people something. You have to be able to sit back and listen to what they say, take in that information, and then work off of that and build a structure from there. People don't respond very well to somebody that just wants to demand the way things are to them, tell them how they should act, tell them how they should be, tell them what they should think. People like to go on a journey. They like to discover things for themselves. And if you can bring somebody to that spot through a conversation, then that's the best way to do it. You're never going to get to that position by yelling at somebody, by demanding that they listen to you, or by talking down to somebody. So now number two is be concise. Be concise. Basically, say what you mean and mean what you say, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know everything. Like I said before, part one, You're going to be wrong. Expect that. But when you're talking about something, you want to make sure that the thing that you're talking about is something that you do know, right? Now, once in a while, I make those mistakes as well. Sometimes I'll talk about something, I'll ramble on, and I might make a statement about something that I don't actually know the intricacies of, accepting that I'm wrong, right? And then after that, you have to make sure that you say what you mean and you mean what you say. So when you say something, make sure that people understand that you understand that topic and you're actually explaining it well. It's extremely important to be humble, and it's extremely important to be to have humility in those situations. And the third way to better explain yourself, to be better at explaining yourself, sorry, is practice. You have to practice all the time. I don't do very many Q&A live streams, so this is practice. The next one I do, I'll be even better at it. Just like anything that you do, anytime that you do it. The more you do it, the better you are. The more you practice, the better you get. So put in that 1,000 hours and try to learn how to better explain yourself that way. One tip that I like to give to people is have conversations with your friends about things that you're interested in. Don't tell them how to think about things, but if things come up, tell them how you think about things, and then ask them questions. Find out what they think, and then from there, build a conversation. You might find out that your conservative friend that always votes Trump and thinks this one way might have a couple of ideas rattling around in their brain that are pretty similar to ideas that you might have. And then that's a great opening for you to be able to get in there and talk to that person and explain something new about a concept that they might not have ever heard about. So definitely, all those things are incredibly important. So next question.
So you got a super chat from comedian WW.
Oh, I got a super chat. Comedian WW. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It was not too personal. What's your day job?
What's my day job? So that is a personal question. I don't really talk about personal stuff too much on this channel, at least what I do or where I'm at, that sort of thing. I like to keep a little bit of distance just in that specific area. But as far as my day job, in the past, I used to be a construction worker. I did that for many years. I also was very involved in maintenance and maintaining different things. And then eventually I became upper class bougie management for a long time. And I did that for a while. I've also owned businesses and stuff like that in the past, to varying degrees of success, of course. And right now I kind of own a small business maybe. And I also supplement a lot of my income with the kind donations from you guys, because that it makes everything a lot easier. Being that I'm so incredibly anti-capitalist, I have a hard time with the idea that I have a hard time with the idea of taking surplus labor value from other people. So even though I do have a small business, I don't have any employees. It's just me. I do all of my work by myself. Sometimes I get a little bit of help here and there for, trade, that sort of thing. But yeah, definitely YouTube helps out that a lot. So I appreciate the super chat. That's super duper helpful. Thank you.
What do you think of the new Green Deal?
What do I think of the new Green Deal? Now, I haven't heard a lot of specifics when it comes to what is actually in the Green New Deal. Yes, the Green New Deal. But I do believe that it involves an incredibly large jobs program in the renewable energy sector. Great idea. Fantastic idea. I think that as far as capitalist proposals to solve this problem have gone, that's probably one of the better ones. I haven't seen really any other good proposal to solve this thing. Of course, the only way to really solve climate change and to really solve all of these problems is to eliminate the capitalist state structure that created it in the first place and that perpetuates it. Now, like everybody out there knows, 100 companies are the reason why the planet is basically suffering right now. I think 90% of the pollution, or 70% of the pollution, something like that, is created by 100 companies. You get rid of those companies, you don't have that pollution. You don't need a Green New Deal for that. But I definitely think that it's important to put people to work building new infrastructure, building a new renewable energy sector. We need that. We need it in a big way. Last time I kind of did a little bit of a question answer thing. People were asking me about nuclear energy. I'm a proponent of nuclear energy. I think that it's one of the least damaging ways that we can produce a large amount of energy for the smallest amount of impact to the environment. That isn't to say it's good. It most certainly isn't great. There are other ways that are much more beneficial, but it is one way that we could look at it. Another really interesting way that I've heard that we could structure the renewable energy sector to really benefit everybody is to actually have certain types of energy producing equipment in areas that can produce energy that way. So, for example, and this is the most obvious thing in the world. For example, if you have a lot of field, then you can set up solar panels or wind farms. If you have some areas where there is a tide that comes in and comes out at a very frequent rate, then you could set up some sort of turbine or some sort of elevation system to be able to gain energy from that. You could do geothermal. You can do, there are many different ways that you can produce energy that we just aren't looking into. I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was Vash the other day when I was watching one of his videos. Was basically saying that we shouldn't be having this situation where a couple of kids in a university are working on a possible solution to climate change, but they're only getting like a government grant that's like, I don't know, $58. It's not useful to us to have that. Multi-billion-dollar corporations or whatever should be working on this every single day so we don't fall into climate catastrophe, but that's not incentivized. Of course not. It's incentivized for them to do things like build bunkers and special barricades around oil tankers, or sorry, around oil drills that are offshore so they don't get flooded by rising tides and that sort of thing. So it's a better idea for the capitalists to continue to invest in the damaging natural resource pulling that we've been working on so far, all of these terrible oil drilling, fracking, that sort of thing. It's more important for them to focus on that than it is for them to actually focus on renewable energy, because that is kind of, well, it's new. It's scary. Things are new. They already have a commodity that they can extract a fuck pile of money out of. So why would they want to go for something new? That wouldn't make them money. So anyway, next question. A little bit rambly on that one.
How would someone convert an alt-right person to an anarcho-communist?
How would someone convert an alt-right person to an anarcho-communist? Okay, so this is a question I actually get a lot. And I think that this is a bit of a misconception that some people have gotten from my videos, is that you can just convert people by saying a couple of magic words and poof, they're automatically an anarcho-communist. That's just not the way that it works. It takes a long time to convince somebody that they should change their mind about something, especially something that's so deeply ingrained as a belief structure. A lot of the time, these belief structures are based off of things that people have learned all the way from the time that they were barely able to speak or walk. It's not something that you can just immediately change. It's not something that you can just make people immediately, you can't just snap your fingers and have them become anarcho-communists. But what you can do is you can plant seeds. You can talk to these people. You can answer their questions honestly. And if you don't know the answer to those questions, you can ask somebody who does and come back to them with an answer to those questions. Arguing with people, I find, like I was saying before, isn't the best way to change someone's mind. Nobody's ever stopped being racist by being called racist, or at least some people have. I'm not going to say nobody has, but few people stop being racist just by being called racist. It's when you explain to them why things are racist in a way that they understand, that actually makes them change their mind. And the other thing too is that it's not like certain people can't have their minds changed about anything. It just might mean that you might be the person that you might not be the right person to change that person's mind. I actually think that Bo from the Fifth Column might have said that, or somebody else has said that. Everything I say is just rehashed shit that I've stolen from everybody else. As anarcho-communists, we don't believe in intellectual property rights, but I do try to give shout outs when I can remember who I'm plagiarizing. Next question.
All right, talk about the commodity production.
About commodity production?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you mean.
All right, it was submitted through YouTube, so.
Well, okay. I can talk a little bit about commodity production. Commodities are produced in an economic system. If you're talking about in an anarcho-communist structured society, there are many different ways that you could structure an anarchist society. I personally go for the one that's the easiest, or at least the easiest in my brain. And that's one that doesn't deviate so far from what we actually have now. What it does is it takes the existing structure, basically, of what we have, and it takes away the power dynamic. So instead of having a person at the top making all the decisions and anyone below them has to follow those orders, you invert that hierarchy, you turn it around. So there is a democratic coalition of people working together to make decisions through different forms of democracy, direct democracy, liquid democracy, vote weighing, and other forms of democracy like that. So that's one way to basically invert the system and change it around. I don't necessarily think that for the revolution to happen or for anarcho-communism to happen that we need to level all the cities and then start off in little tiny groups in the middle of nowhere, like little agrarian societies where we're like trading skins and fish and shit like that. Like that, that doesn't make any sense to me. We already have almost all of the structure here to just reorchestrate it, turn it around so we can actually use it in a way that benefits society and not just the 1%. But it will take a lot of work, but the structure is already there. So how do you produce commodities in an anarcho-communist structured society? Very similar to the way you produce commodities now. The only difference is that you wouldn't have this incentive to exploit the workers like you do under capitalism. And you would actually be producing goods for the benefit of society and only the amount of goods that are actually needed are produced. Novel idea.
How would an anarcho-communist society deal with mass destruction, both in their hands and in the hands of others?
Oh, weapons of mass. Okay, so how would an anarcho-communist structured society deal with weapons of mass destruction in the hands of others or in the hands of our own, or in the hands of ourselves? Okay, so weapons of mass destruction, they're an interesting thing. So it depends on what stage you're talking about. If we're talking about way down the line when we have worldwide communism, international communism, excuse me, then yeah, those kind of WMDs should be gotten rid of entirely. Obviously, just disarm the entire world, get rid of militaries. If you can get rid of all of those things, just get rid of them. They're not necessary. But until that point, you do need a certain amount of protection, and having an access to weapons of mass destruction is one of like the few reasons why countries like North Korea are able to even stay alive right now and not just be bombed back into the Stone Age. They have that mutually assured destruction thing going on. So I feel as though if you were to have the revolution and then immediately get rid of all weapons of mass destruction, all military, all everything like that, then you're basically just opening yourself up to every other capitalist country just walking in and steamrolling you. Obviously, all of those structures would need to be reorganized, and there are many ways that you can organize a military under anarcho-communist ideals. It's actually extremely easy, and it makes a lot more sense than doing it the capitalist way or the way that we have it now. It's not, and the thing that people forget to realize or they overlook is that anarchism doesn't mean the complete elimination of all hierarchies. It means the elimination of all unjustified or unnecessary hierarchies. So you can still have a sergeant or a general or whatever making decisions for a group of militiamen or military or whatever, and you don't actually need to have an individual at the top making any kind of decision for that. So next question.
I'm not sure this guy's a character he's playing or to be funny or if he's serious.
Okay, so somebody asked if I'm a character or if I'm serious, and they're referring to my re-education series. Both. I think that it's important to play a bit of a character while I'm also explaining some of these things for a couple of different reasons. I think it's important to make sure that I have that plausible deniability, if you know what I mean. And also at the same time, I think it keeps it interesting for the audience. I think that it keeps people engaged. when I'm playing things up and I'm acting a little bit more bombastic than I usually would. The ideas that I'm putting forward are 100% legitimate. They're things that I believe in. I don't, unless I'm making a joke or unless I'm being sarcastic or something like that, I don't say things in my videos that I don't mean. If I'm wrong about things, I'm willing to take those things back, like I said before. But I try to say, like I said, being concise. I say what I mean. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. So I do mean the things that I say in my videos outside of jokes. But I do over exaggerate certain things, and I do put on a little bit of theatrics when I'm doing the re-education videos. It's interesting. Everybody does it. YouTube is a visual medium. And if you're not using that medium to your fullest extent, then you're not using YouTube properly, like standing in front of a blank white wall with like a couple of weird things in the background. Visual medium, everybody. Next question.
All right. How did you get started in anarchism?
How did I get started in anarchism? I think I kind of answered that question a little bit ago when I was explaining how how I didn't choose anarchism. Anarchism chose me. I think I've always been more anarchist than anything else. I at one point was very fascist. I don't want to mince words here. I was at one point very much that way, and I learned a lot of different things, and I moved way across the other side of the spectrum. But it was a gradual move, right? It wasn't something that happened immediately. And back in those days, well, it doesn't really matter, but I moved to that side of the spectrum over the course of a certain amount of time. But even though it took me a while to move there, I've never really been authoritarian about it. Now, when I was fascist, yes, I was more authoritarian than I am now, absolutely. But I also heard libertarian ideas and they made me go, interesting. And that's the thing, is that I kept my mind open to new concepts, to new ideas. So it started to move me over, right? I guess it's the reverse of what happens to a lot of people. They go libertarian and then go fascist. I went fascist and then went libertarian. What's that? And actually, funny enough, Penn and Teller got me into more libertarian leaning things. I don't agree with them politically now, but they were actually kind of seminal in making me think about things in ways that I never thought about them before. Penn and Teller's bullshit from way back in the day was really interesting to me. And it was a way of looking at the political sphere and the economic sphere and social issues and stuff like that with an aura of skepticism that I definitely did see online when it comes to religion, but I didn't really see that same sort of skepticism coming from anywhere else online. So when I seen Penn and Teller doing that, I was like, hey, that's really interesting. I like what they have to say, and it kind of moved me over more libertarian and that sort of thing. And it wasn't, once I knew I was an anarchist, once I read about anarchism, anarchocommunism specifically, I understood it, right? And right away I realized, yeah, I've been an anarchist for quite a long time, and it made things really fall into place in ways that they didn't before. So when exactly was the date that I became an anarchist? I'm not entirely sure, but that was kind of the process. There's a lot of other processes involved with that too. I also watched a lot of videos from other, I guess they're sort of bread tubers now, but it wasn't called bread tube back in the day, like Libertarian Socialist Rants and a lot of other people that made content. And I think by the time I actually made it to his videos, I kind of already had it in my mind that that's what I was, but it explained things more and kind of brought things more into more of a concise view. So next question.
Lies capitalism has created that the average person won't know or understand?
Okay, lies capitalism has created that the average person won't know or understand. Everything. So the democratic, the electoral system that you currently live under is basically manipulated by capitalists to be a big lie that is orchestrated to make everybody believe that democratically electing a representative somehow will make a difference in policies that are made in Washington or wherever you happen to be. That's just a big lie. It's just a massive scam to make people actually believe that they have some sort of say in what happens in their world. They really don't. if you read anything about Noam Chomsky, he goes through the 5 different filters of the media. Everything goes through those different filters, and it's all orchestrated to make sure that the people that are in power, the elites, continue to hold on to power and gain more power by convincing the people to basically vote for things that would be detrimental to them. It's called manufacturing consent. That's what the capitalist system does all the time. That's definitely a big lie that a lot of people think is actually true. And when you start to realize that it isn't true, man, those walls start to fall down pretty quickly. Actually, when I started realizing that all this stuff was kind of just a smokescreen, just a big show, it freaked me out, man. Like, I didn't understand what was going on. It's like existential crisis to the max. You start seeing all of these things and you're like, oh, fuck, is that real? Oh, fuck, is that true? Now I'm going to have to be skeptical about literally everything. And I said this in sort of a Q&A video that I did in the past, that when I started learning all of this stuff, I started like reading a bunch about the Soviet Union. And I'm like, oh, shit, were they the good guys all along? Holy fuck. And I'm like, oh, I'm a fucking tanky now. Like, I almost went that far where I was like, oh man, I'm going to be a Soviet Union apologist because everything that Western media has told us is a lie. Kind of is, but it doesn't mean that what they said wasn't a lie as well. History is written by the victors. And when you have a monopoly over media, then you are the one that's going to be the fucking hero now, aren't you? So did I answer that question or did I just go off on a tangent?
It's fine.
It's fine.
Why are white Americans so apathetic to social issues?
Okay, why are white Americans so apathetic about social issues? This got a lot of upvotes, and it's an interesting question because it raises all kinds of different emotions in different people. I know that some white people, if they were to look at that question, they would immediately get their back up because they're like, "What are you talking about? Why white people? Why does it have to be about white people?" And I understand that reaction, and I also understand that a lot of people of color and minorities and stuff like that, they are going to see kind of this correlation between white people and being apathetic when it comes to social issues. Now, are white people apathetic when it comes to social issues? Okay, well, let's go through it. If this correlation was actually causation and white people were actually apathetic towards social issues, then I could definitely, I definitely think that I could see the possibility there, right? And I could understand why. I can make an argument as to why that would be if it is actually true. I have no idea if it actually is. I don't have any statistics in front of me, but I could say that white people would probably be more apathetic to social issues because they're not affected by them. Obviously, people of color and minorities are much more affected by social issues than white people would be, or at least than the majority would be, because the minority is always more affected by those things than the majority is. And the majority would probably see it as being a non-issue. So they wouldn't be fighting for it as much. But I don't necessarily know if that's the case, because I actually think that white people are just as interested in social issues. It's just that we're all propagandized to in different ways. So it's not necessarily like white people are apathetic about social issues. Some of them are very much the opposite of apathetic about social issues. They care very much about them, but through a lens that a lot of people on the left or people of color or minorities just don't understand. Just like I think a lot of people of color or minorities, they might actually too be apathetic about social issues. It depends on the person, probably a smaller percentage, but it depends on the person. People are all people and we all act in similar sort of ways. And basing all of our ideology or basing some sort of thing where we take a person out of their group and identify them as, say, like white or black or gay or whatever, when we're pointing at somebody and looking at them like that, I don't like those sorts of things because it basically others that person and it makes it seem as though they think differently from everybody else. And though I think that, yes, certain cultures, certain people in different cultures would think differently about certain things, I think for the most part, if you're a white person and you're a black person and you're both living in the same area, like you're both living in Alabama, you have far more in common with one another than you have with, I don't know, than another Black person that happens to live in New York or in Canada. I think that race is important in that we've made it important that race is important in that we've made it important because people are discriminated because of their race. But as far as scientifically, as far as science goes, there is no real difference between the races. There's cultural differences, that sort of thing, but there's no real genetic difference between the races. So, yeah, but that I went on a bit of a tangent there. But are white people apathetic to social issues? Yes and no. I mean, it depends on the person, and I don't have statistics in front of me to tell you either way. So that's my answer to that. Next question.
What are your thoughts on Ancaps?
My thoughts on Ancaps. Everybody wants me to say Ancaps get the bullet. I don't think Ancaps really even exist anymore. I talked to a few Ancaps, or at least former Ancaps, and most of them have converted from Ancaps to like individualist anarchists, or a bunch of different variations that aren't quite ANCAP anymore. So like, what do I think about them? I think that the ideology is just so blatantly wrong. And when you actually get into an argument with somebody that's an ANCAP, what I noticed is they have a lot of the same defense mechanisms as people who are extreme, Soviet Union apologists. They have a very similar mentality where it's like you give them a bunch of information, you take them on a little journey, you take them on a little walk on how something might work or might not work, and you'll bring them right to the point of where they're about to agree with you, and then they drop everything that they're doing and they just go, oh, no, that's not the way things work because you just don't understand this thing. And then they say that you got to read this book or whatever it is. Because they aren't able to explain it properly, or this book explains it better. And I find that happens a lot. So ANCAPs, they don't like, is even like Dapperton an ANCAP anymore? I have no idea. I think I'm actually in his Discord server, and I don't even know if he talks about anarchism or about ANCAP stuff anymore. I don't even think that he is. So anyway, next question.
What are your thoughts on the problem of racism and fascism in heavy metal?
What are my thoughts about the problem of racism and fascism in heavy metal? So even though I have a picture of, what does it say? The Norwegian black metal? This isn't my house. I don't even know what that is. I don't really listen to a lot of metal. Here's a dirty little secret of mine that I've told everybody on the entire internet on Twitter. I used to be a juggalo. So as far as like terrible music that you listen to while you're an angsty teenager, I didn't listen to a lot of metal or black metal. I listened to like clown music, fun stuff. But that isn't to say that there aren't adults that like black metal, and there certainly are. And there is actually a lot of black metal bands that are extremely good, and they're just incredibly talented. It's not my genre of music, so I'm pulling your leg a little bit here. I have a lot of black metal friends and a lot of heavy metal friends, so I joke at them and say, oh, what were you doing back in high school wearing corpse paint when you could have been wearing juggalo makeup? I mean, really. But it's just a bunch of bullshit. But as far as like the fascist element of that goes, yeah, that it is definitely a problem. And I know a lot of people that are in that community that have to really separate the art from the artist if they want to listen to some black metal bands, and others are just completely incapable of listening to certain music that's written by those artists at all. It just depends on your personal feelings about it. I don't think it was the metal scene. I think it was the punk scene where they created the Good Night White Pride meme. And a lot of people had that as back patches and stuff like that. So this is something that's actually been a problem within more alternative music scene areas for a very long time. I think that it actually has to do a little bit with the fact that a lot of those scenes attract a lot more extreme type people, not necessarily extremists, but just extreme people that want to have extreme fun and extreme thrill. They like to listen to extreme music and sometimes might have extreme ideologies. That isn't to say everybody is like that. Of course not. People are people. People are all different everywhere you go. But yeah, it seems like there is a certain element to that where some people get drawn to it. And angry, violent music is something that I was interested in back when I was a fascist. So I definitely see the appeal to fascists when it comes to angry, violent music. Funny enough, a lot of people that listen to black metal and like heavy metal and all kinds of music like that, they don't hear it as being violent or extreme or heavy, really. I mean, like they understand that it is, but they just hear it as being like music. You know, it's like a good tune, man. I like this. I'm gonna like head bang to it and like get into a fucking slam pit or a circle pit. It's cool. I have my co-host here is a black metal fan, and they're just shaking their head at me this entire time. They're like, "You're gonna get murdered." Varg is gonna come out from the woods and just start beating me with a squirrel or something.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Somebody just suggested System of a Down.
Oh, you know what's funny? I actually really do like System of a Down. My assistant hates System of a Down. I think that their music is really good, and it makes a lot of good points, especially some of the older stuff. Check out the System song, Prison Song. I hadn't listened to that since I was a high school kid, and I liked it then. I love it now. It's not my kind of music again. I like Taylor Swift. No, I'm just kidding. But I liked it. It spoke to me. It was something that was heavy and hard and had a good message. So, next question.
Why aren't you on the Discord ever?
Oh, okay. Now, there are people that are probably upset with me for not being on my Discord as often as I have been. I have been so incredibly busy lately. I haven't had time to get in on my Discord. Just a lot of things in life have been taking up a lot of my time, and I haven't been able to actually get involved in a lot of stuff, but I'm trying to get back in there. I left a message in there the other day. Hopefully somebody's seen that and thought, hey, he's actually here again, but it's difficult. Trying to juggle all of the different things that I have in my life. I just don't have the 5 minutes that it takes for me to sit down on my phone and actually have fun anymore. It's daily uploads are a bitch, especially when you're working as well. So next question.
What's your favorite color?
My favorite color, red, duh. Probably my favorite shade would be black. So I would say some sort of combination, maybe a diagonal. If I was to make some sort of diagonal flag, I would say black on top and then maybe red just below that. Yeah, that would be my favorite color for sure.
Do you ever get comments about your hair and sexual orientation?
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So comments about my hair. Do I ever get comments about my hair? I get comments about my hair all the time. The funny thing is, though, is that the majority of comments that I get about my hair aren't from the people that you would expect to be the ones that actually talk about my hair. You would think that it would be some left-winger coming in and saying, that's cultural appropriation. It actually usually isn't. Anytime I've had a person of color ever comment on my hair, especially in real life or anywhere really, they say, hey, cool hair. Really like your hair, or they say, hey, Rasta man. I get that one a lot, actually, unfortunately. But that's about the extent of what they say. But right-wingers and centrists love bringing up my hair. It's like the biggest gotcha in the world. I can't listen to this white guy because he's got dreadlocks. Okay, gear down, Turbo. Just take a step back and let's talk about this for a second. Now, it's not cultural appropriation for a white person to have dreadlocks. I'm sorry. And I'm going to explain why. For thousands of years, every culture all over the entire globe has had dreadlocks. It's something your hair naturally does if you don't wash it. Well, I wash mine, but if you don't wash it, if you don't brush it. Everyone from the Celts to Spartans to Vikings, to ancient Nordic cultures all across Europe, all of which are my ancestry. I'm Icelandic, Irish, and English, so Celtic and that sort of thing, all of which are my ancestry, and they all wore dreadlocks. Ancient people from India in ancient times, they wore dreadlocks. I think they even still wear dreadlocks now. Native Americans had dreadlocks. Every culture has had dreadlocks, and I feel like this is all a meme that was created by an argument to college students had in a high school or in their college one time in the hallway that became like this huge meme and like blew up and became this thing overnight. This like big spectacle. And I don't think that it's true. If I'm getting any of this wrong, by the way, if my hair is somehow cultural appropriation, or if you can make a good argument about it, leave it in the comment section below, in the actual comment section, not the live chat. And we'll talk about it later, because like if you have a good argument about it, then definitely give it to me. But every argument that I've had so far, unbelievably, like almost every single time, it's a centrist or a right winger that just thinks that they got the biggest gotcha. Oh, you're a white guy with dreadlocks. How can you be a leftist? The left is going to tear you apart because you got different different hair. Yeah, because the left really cares what hairstyle you have. Anyway, my sexual orientation, that's an interesting question. That's something that I don't bring up on my channel because it's not really important to my channel. So I never talk about it. I'm pan, so that's cool. Not really much to say about it. I found that out a little while ago. It was kind of like a big discovery, and a couple of friends of mine, when I came out to them, they were like, "Oh man, that's super awesome!" And it was hugs and everything like that went around in a big way. So that was like really empowering. It felt really good. But it's not something that really has anything to do with my channel, in that I usually teach things to do with like history and politics and that sort of thing. So I don't really talk about my sexual orientation all that much. If that's something people want me to talk about, I guess I could, but it's not really prudent to, at least the format of the channel that I have so far. So next question.
Super chat from Darth Vadent. Have you ever taken a DNA ancestry test?
Thank you very much, Darth Vadent, for the super chat. Very generous of you. Thank you very much. Have I ever taken a DNA test? What is that thing called? You and Me Plus or something? I don't remember what it's called, but the DNA test thing that they do. No, I haven't taken one, and I strongly suggest that none of you take one. Now, I don't want to be paranoid here, but I just feel like it's not the best idea in the world to give some corporation my DNA. I just feel like that sounds like something that would be in like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, like just some sort of like despotic, like quasi like post-apocalyptic terror land where they want to have like your DNA on file so they can know more about you. How can we sell this person hamburgers more efficiently, knowing that they're like 1/4% African Chinese or something? Like, it's just, I don't know. No, like, I want to know my family history, I guess. Like, that would be cool. It'd be neat to find out, but I'm not itching to find that out so much that I'd willingly give my DNA to. No. If you think I'm a conspiracy theorist about that, definitely leave a message in the comment section down below about that, because that's funny. I want to know how you think that that's a good idea. Go ahead.
Why did you used to call yourself Deadhead Animation? Are you an animator?
Oh, okay. So my channel used to be called Deadhead Animation, and I think my Patreon is also still called Deadhead Animation. Link to my Patreon in the description box below. But I used to call myself that because it was a cool name that a friend of mine came up with. His name is Tony. Awesome dude. Tony, if you're out there, you fucking rock. Me and him started this little animation company. It was called Deadhead Animation. We worked on a few projects together. Then I kind of just took it over. I turned it into something called the Lego Darwin Show, which was an atheist net broadcast. I don't know what you call that, TV show, but it's over the internet. So a net show. And I basically took it from there and did a bunch of things with it. And eventually I stopped doing animation entirely on this channel. So I thought it wasn't necessarily prudent to have Deadhead Animation in the title anymore. So I changed it to Re-Education. And, I wish that I could remember the name of the skeleton. But it wasn't until after, like right after I changed my name, somebody in my Discord server brought up a picture of an old skeleton it's from an old newspaper clipping, and I can't remember what the skeleton is called, but he's basically the ghost of communism or the specter of communism or something like that. And he's got a top hat on and has a banner that says communism across the thing. And it turned, like, if you're in the chat and you know what the name of this skeleton is, leave it in the chat, because I can't remember for the life of me what it is. But yeah, it's this old newspaper clipping. And if you look really closely on the top of the brim of his hat, it actually says deadhead. So I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that deadhead was like a slang term that they used, I believe, in like the early 20s. It was in the past anyway. They used that as a slang term to refer to anarchists or communists. Weird, right? So like, again, I didn't choose to be an anarchist. Anarchism chose me. So like, even before I knew what deadhead was, I apparently called myself Deadhead Animation. So if anybody asks from now on, that's why I had the name Deadhead Animation. I knew the whole time. Next question.
Can you do me a favor and repeat the questions out loud after I read them to you? Just remember to do that. You didn't do that.
Oh, did I not do that in this
Yeah,
one?
just remember
Oh,
to do that.
yeah, I'll try to do that. Sorry about that,
All
guys.
good. What saved you from fascism?
What saved me from fascism? Like, I want to say Christy Winters, but not quite, because I was already well on my way away from fascism by then. But she definitely pushed me into being like an anarchist, or at least more socialist or SJW leaning back in the day. If you get a chance, definitely subscribe to Christy Winters. I haven't seen her content in a little while, but I know that she has always been amazing. So, but I had a couple of interviews with her while I was still an atheist. Well, I still am an atheist, but when I was doing my atheist show, I had a few interviews with her, and she gave me really good information. She like did not hold back. She gave me great answers to all the questions that I had, and I was like, what are you talking about, lady? And it turns out that like I agreed with like most of the things that she said, and up until that point I'd just been listening to basically the spun version of the things that she said from, who knows, like Sargon of Akkad or another mental case like that. So so Christy Winters definitely helped push me to that side. But as far as just stopped being a fascist, what saved me from being a fascist, I guess, learning, talking to people that had more information than I did, talking to people that were of a different race than I was. I grew up in a very, well, not in a very white area, but in a very ethnocentric family where, you know, we stuck to our own kind of thing. So there wasn't a lot of interacting with other racial groups. Once I started doing that, I realized how terrible and like bad it was for me to be that way. So I quickly changed my mind, quickly changed my tune on it. And I think that was basically based on my ingrained empathy for human beings. Thoughtslime made an incredibly deep and interesting video the other day where he was saying that the tenets of leftism are based in empathy and based in caring and stuff like that. And I definitely think a large part of leftism is based in that. And I think that a lot of that empathy was what moved me more. But I think the logical arguments are what convinced me and made me stay. So, and the logical arguments are sound as fuck. So, yeah. Next question.
Who has the best beard on the left?
Who has the best beard on the left? This is such an easy question. Bo from the fifth column. Are you kidding me? I'm trying to catch up. I've been growing forever and I just can't do it. And then I guess Peter Coffin, when he dyed his beard in the stripes for his America video or his free speech video, that was a definite second place, because that was pretty epic, I must say. Next question.
Would you debate / have a discussion with Vash or Cult of Dusty?
Would I have a debate / discussion with Vash or Cult of Dusty? Yeah. I don't do debates, and I would never. I would like to have a conversation with Vash. That would be fun. He's a really interesting dude. I think that the things that he says, even though I don't agree with everything he says, I think that he comes at it in a very logical, very understanding way. And I've had conversations with him in private before. Those have always been really interesting, and I enjoyed our conversations then. So it would be neat for me to get a chance to talk to Vash. That would be cool. And Cult of Dusty, man, I've watched Cult of Dusty since like way back, and me and him we didn't necessarily follow the same path, but it's like I watched him back when I was like more fascist leaning, and he was perfect, right? Logic, and or whatever he did, logic. And then I didn't see him again for forever, and then he just popped up out of nowhere, and I'm like, yeah, fucking Dusty. I used to like that guy. I probably hate him now. And I watched one of his videos, and I'm like, holy shit, Dusty, you're so like reasonable and understanding. Cool. So yeah, I got to catch a couple of Dusty live streams. He's a really interesting dude. I like it. I follow him on Twitter. He says some interesting stuff on Twitter. Really cool guy. So yeah, just if for some reason you're subscribed to me and you're not subscribed to those two, definitely subscribe to those two because they're absolutely fantastic.
Where would you start a social dem to help a SOCDEM to help them understand the details of anarcho-communism? I've always had trouble understanding how laws would be enforced.
Oh, okay. Where would I start to get a SOCDEM, a social democrat, to understand how what works in anarcho-communism?
Social structures.
How social structures work in anarcho-communism because they don't understand because things need to be policed. Is that what it is? What was the last bit?
I deleted it.
Unfortunately, my assistant literally deleted the comment as I read it out. So, yeah. So, how would I explain to a social democrat the tenets of anarchism and how you can actually go about having an anarchist society without having law enforcement structures? Okay, that is so many different questions all at once. For those of you who don't know, social democrat are different from democratic socialists. Democratic socialists are post-capitalists, which means they don't believe in capitalism, whereas social democrats are still capitalists. So Bernie Sanders, even though he says he's a democratic socialist, he's actually a social democrat. And to explain to them how law enforcement works under anarcho-communism, see, that is an interesting question because it can work in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that I like to express like strongly on my channel is that there isn't just one way to do anarchism. There isn't just one catch-all method to do anarcho-communism. It's basically a tenet, a bunch of ideas that you're able to use as a structure to be able to basically model how society could or should function. So under anarcho-communism, how would you obey certain laws? Well, first of all, you wouldn't have arbitrary laws that have to do with property rights. You would have personal property, obviously, but you actually have communal property when it comes to the means of production and that sort of thing. If it's non-movable property, excluding possible things like houses and so forth, then it is considered communal property. That eliminates a fuck pile of different laws that you have on the books. So all of a sudden, you don't have people fighting and scrounging for scraps and having to steal from people so they can actually get by because the workers own and control the means of production. And as long as you're sign the contract in the society and you're working and you're doing all the things that are outlined, then you get all that stuff for free. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to worry. You don't have to be playing this stupid capitalistic game where everything is illegal. Also, the other thing too, getting rid of the the prison industrial complex. Most of the people that are in prison right now are in there because of non-violent crimes. You get rid of that. You get rid of the reasons why they're going in there, drug offenses, that sort of thing. You've basically eliminated a large majority of the laws that people would be breaking. So after that, you have things like murder or rape or whatever, like pick your poison. There are a few things left that would still be around. Mass shootings, that would still be around, possibly, hopefully not, but if it is, then those sorts of things could be dealt with by individuals that are focused on that specific task. If you look at the way policing is done now, it's done in the most arbitrary way possible. It's so unbelievably ridiculous. Right now, we have police that basically do everything from getting kitty cats out of trees and solving domestic disputes to counter-terrorism tactics or counter-domestic terrorism tactics and driving around in tanks and attacking people and that sort of, like we have police handling every different aspect of humanity, right? Law enforcement is an incredibly large field with lots of different jobs. And I think that those jobs shouldn't be all done by a police officer. They should be divvied up and given to people that actually need to be in those fields. As far as drug addiction goes, you have people in the medical field and in the psychology field to deal with that. As far as domestic disputes go, you have counselors and sometimes people that can mediate and mitigate conflict and be able to do conflict resolution. When you have a hostage situation, you have people that deal with that. When you have a situation where you might need a SWAT team, I don't know why you would, but if you ever had a reason for one, then they wouldn't be the same type of cops, you know, like it would be a different branch. I think the SWAT team is a different branch. Leave the SWAT team part out of it. I hate the SWAT team. I hate police. ACAB as far as I'm concerned. Next question.
How do you feel a socialist society should deal with things like sabotage and infiltration by capitalist forces?
How should a socialist society deal with things like sabotage and infiltration by capitalist forces? Deep question. A problem that almost every socialist country has definitely had to deal with. There are lots of different ways to deal with it. And unfortunately, this is something that is kind of an arms race. Every socialist country, whenever it comes to be, is a threat to the capitalist ones. So whenever a socialist country comes up with an idea to combat capitalists from being able to get in and corrupt things in a certain way, the capitalists will evolve and they'll change their tactics. Capitalists are really good at finding different ways to make lots of money or to exploit people. So there are many different ways that we could work towards stopping that sort of thing. But unfortunately, it's something that has to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Interestingly, sometimes the easiest tactics, the simplest things are what work the best when taking down large power structures. I'm going to give you a stupid example, and I'm just going to give you this example, and then I'm going to move on because we don't need to extrapolate from this. But in Iraq and Afghanistan, one of the main things that rebel forces do is they'll send some person, some kid or whatever, up to the top of a hill with a bolt-action rifle. And he'll sit on top of that hill aiming at a military base, the United States military base, and he'll fire off a bunch of shots. Bolt-action rifle, you know, just firing off a couple of shots. He'll fire off about 10 or 15 shots before the United States military starts firing back at him all sorts of things. RPGs, many different types of weapons. They could be sending anything that they can to destroy this one kid on the top of a hill with a bolt-action rifle. He'll do it in the middle of the night, you know, so it's hard to find him. And what that one kid is able to do is expend basically millions and millions of dollars worth of ordnance and armament and all of that from that military base, just with a couple of cents worth of bullets, right? Sometimes the simplest solution is the best way to defeat an incredibly large power structure. So next question.
How do I research a political topic properly?
How do you research a political topic properly? Okay, so here's an interesting thing that I actually learned this in a video today. So there is something, it's basically like a learning curve, right? Everybody basically starts off at zero. You don't know anything, and say at about 500 hours, you get to quite a bit of a peak of where you know quite a bit of things. After that 500 hours, you can do it for 30,000 hours, there we go, an extremely large amount of time after that. And you'll notice that the amount that you actually learn after that point is only a small percentage more. So the first bit of knowledge that you gain up to that 500 hours or whatever it is, that's about 90% of all of the knowledge that you'll need to know about a subject. And after that, everything else is just that extra 10% can take you years to learn. So the first thing that you have to do when you want to learn a new topic is actually just get in there, have the intestinal fortitude to sit there and endure learning a new topic, hopefully something that you can relate to something in your life. And then once you've gained that first bit of knowledge, you put that little bit of knowledge in your head, then after that, it works like a ladder and you can kind of build on top of that and build on top of that and build on top of that so you can know more about things. And the interesting thing about knowing more about things is the more you know about one thing, the easier it is to relate to other things. So once you know, say 90% of one thing that's pretty difficult to understand, now you can start learning about other things. And since you already know that 90% of the one thing, other things kind of fall into place. For example, I used to do some work with, I used to do metalworking when I was in construction, folding seams, folding hems, bending 90s, doing all sorts of things like that. And I noticed that when I had a hobby for a little while where I was sewing jackets and stuff like that, I noticed that a lot of the things that I learned while I was in doing that sheet metal work was very similar to what I was doing with sewing. So learning one trade or learning one thing can be basically a jumping off point for learning more things. So yeah, next question.
Do you feel there could be a collaboration between libertarian socialists and Marxist-Leninists / Maoists?
Do I think there can be a collaboration between libertarian socialists / Marxist-Leninists / Maoists? Yes, absolutely. So long as somebody isn't so far gone to the point of where they think like the Soviet Union did nothing wrong and we need to institute super authoritarian power structures and stuff like that. As long as they haven't gone that far, then we have almost everything in common. People call them tankies. Like I said before, I don't really like that term, but let's use, for the sake of this argument, people like that. Maybe not, right? But other Marxist-Leninists, Maoists, absolutely. I have talked to several Maoists in the past. I wish I could remember their name because I'd give them a shout out right now. I want to say their name is Maoist 98. Ooh. I mean, I'll give you a shout out soon, don't worry. But I've talked to this person on Twitter several different times. They have a wonderful channel. Damn, now I'm hyping up their channel. I didn't even say their name. I think that they have great points. I think that Maoists and Marxist-Leninists do something really interesting, and that's they are more history oriented, or at least Marxist-Leninists are. They're very history oriented. They're very adamant when it comes to theory, when it comes to praxis. They have a lot of ideas that are very useful and can be worked in, I think personally, a non-hierarchical or at least a reduced hierarchical way that can actually benefit society. The interesting thing about Marxist-Leninists, and actually my buddy Kurt Vinlander was talking about this the other day. He was saying that, and I agree with him, that basically we don't talk about the state in the same way. Anarchists define the state as this thing, and Marxist-Leninists define the state as this other thing. And I feel like a lot of the time we're fighting each other on that definition instead of listening to each other and what we mean by that definition. So yeah, I think that a lot of Marxist-Leninists, yeah, absolutely, we can work with them. Fuck yeah, absolutely. I love Marxist-Leninists. I'll work with them all the time. Maoists, absolutely, I'll work with them too. I actually find Maoists to be more invested in actual praxis than Marxist-Leninists. I feel like more Maoists that I've met have been more involved in on-the-ground campaigns and movements and that sort of thing. And they have a little bit better understanding in how to put things into actual practice than Marxist-Leninists do. But yeah, I want more information from all of them. I want to work with all of them. This goes into my mantra. I absolutely think that it is imperative that we have unity among all working people, not just on the left, not just on the right, all working people. If we don't have that, then we're not going to be able to defeat the capitalists. So, next question.
You got a super chat from NK.
Nice.
If you fuck up, apologize, get attacked, now what? Similar to what happened in ContraPoints.
Oh, okay. So I got a super chat. Thank you very much, NK.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Thank you very much. Really, really, really helps. Now, and the question was, if you fuck up and you get attacked like ContraPoints did, what is your course of action basically afterwards? Is that basically what they said?
Yeah, now what?
Now what? Good question. Very good question. I think that something people don't really realize when they are talking about YouTubers and YouTube celebrities is that we are very much just regular fucking people. ContraPoints, the biggest YouTuber on the left, super normal person. Well, I'm sure that they're normal. I haven't actually talked to them specifically, but I've talked to other people that are high up in the BreadTube community, and they're just normal people, right? And they have a hard time even understanding that they have to act a certain way because they have that celebrity status now. It's something that I've had to deal with. I'm not a celebrity, at least I don't fucking think I am. I'm literally not even wearing pants right now. I'm wearing pants, I'm just kidding. But like we don't think of ourselves as being celebrities because we have to still deal with the shit that everybody deals with. I still struggle every month to pay rent and buy food. Not a month goes by that I don't struggle for that. And a lot of other creators that I know are exactly the same way. We're just regular people. So when it comes to fucking up, right? Yeah, okay, let's say ContraPoints really did fuck up. I think that it was a misunderstanding. No, not a misunderstanding. They did fuck up. But also, I think that kind of the blowback was taken out of proportion. But what do you do after you fuck up like that? The best you can. I know that ContraPoints did come back to Twitter with somebody else is taking care of their Twitter now, or her Twitter now, which I think is a good thing because I feel like not having that voice there, just like she said in her tweet, opened up the field for everybody to speak for her. And that's not something that you can have. So she definitely needed to come back and be able to speak for herself and not have everybody just talk for her. Absolutely. I think that's a great thing. But when you fuck up, man, that is something that plagues you. And so many different creators have to deal with that because the internet is forever. Right? And people are going to get this idea about you, even if they never met you, even if they've never watched your videos, even if they have no idea about who you are or what your content is about. They're going to think something of you. That's this one thing. And it's almost impossible to get rid of that. That's one of the main problems that I have with this more, I'm going to use the term cancel culture, even though people have a problem with the term cancel culture. Like Peter Coffin expressed that he doesn't like that term. And I understand his argument and I agree with it, but for the sake of brevity, let's use that term. What I don't like about cancel culture when we're talking about people that are allies is that it's not like it kicks people out of the left, like I said in my video about ContraPoints. It's that it keeps new people from coming in, and it works to discredit those who are here. A major thing that was done back in the past was discrediting the leadership or people that were in high positions within socialist groups and making them unpalatable to the common people. And when you do that, it erodes the movement. That isn't to say that everybody should just be able to get away with saying whatever they want with absolutely no consequences. Absolutely not. But I'm able to kind of look at this on all sides here and just, it's a really tough decision. It's a really tough situation to be in. And I think that ContraPoints so far has been handling it gracefully. I think that she has done everything that she can to mitigate as much of the pressure and pain that she was sustaining from Twitter. But unfortunately, deleting her account created more problems. How do you know that's going to happen? Well, you don't think about it at the time. You just do it, and then it creates more problems. You thought it was going to solve something, and it didn't. Sucks. It's a shitty situation. I'm on ContraPoint's side. I think that I support her, obviously. I also support my NB pals out there. If you were offended by what she said, yeah, what she said was offensive. Like, I talked about it in my video, so I don't want to go over it again here because there's so many different aspects to this conversation. They made a great point. ContraPoint's made a good point. Check out the video that I already did. That's my best explanation for that.
All right. Should we actively try to reclaim every slur except for cracker?
Should we actively try to reclaim every slur except for cracker? That is a really interesting question. Now, for those of you that don't know, the term cracker should be more offensive to you than it probably is at the moment. Because the term cracker actually comes from basically the slave owning days where people would refer to the slave owner as a whip cracker or a cracker. When I explain this to white people who say, oh, I never get offended by anything that anybody says, I can't be offended by any racist thing that anybody ever says, I explain that story to them and immediately they get offended. Just like anybody does. Everybody gets offended when you say something derogatory about them. Everybody feels gross and terrible when you say really mean shit. And I think that that's just an obvious, it's just obvious. That's just an obvious thing. Should we try to reclaim all of those words to kind of take away their power? It might work. Might be an interesting way to go about it. Black people have tried for many years to reclaim the N-word. Has it worked? Varying degrees of success. You know, they don't explicitly say the N-word in politics anymore. They don't explicitly make laws disparaging against Black people, but instead now they do different things like gerrymandering or different political decisions that take away rights from minority groups and people of color anyway. So should you reclaim words that are offensive? If you think that you should, and it's your word, you know, do it. If you're homosexual and you want to take back the F slur, you're all the power to you, right? If you're mentally disabled and you want to take back the R slur, that's your decision. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you should or you shouldn't, but I will tell you that some people are going to find that offensive. Some people are going to tell you not to do it. I remember way back years ago, right? Way back in like the 80s and 90s, at least, when I was first starting to understand social movements and stuff like that, a lot of Black people who were around during the civil rights era really hated the idea that a lot of more modern rappers during the 80s or during the early 90s and early 2000s were using that word very liberally. They were using it all the time. And a lot of people that grew up in the civil rights era, they didn't like that because they still knew that negative connotation that came along with it. So it's different frames of thought, different ways to look at things, right? Everybody's going to have a different way to look at things. You're never going to agree with everybody 100% on anything. So next question.
Talk about what you put in that big bot of yours and your get big routine. Look, we see you flexing in all your vids. The jig is up. We know you are swole. Help us get the big.
Okay. So I don't know if you heard what she said, but basically somebody wanted, do you want me to read that?
Yeah, you can read it. It's just
Okay.
the unchecked one.
Oh, okay, goodness. This is from Shoemender. Talk about what you put in that big bot of yours and your get big routine. Look, we see you flexing in all your vids. The jig is up. We know you're swole. Help us get big. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's hilarious. Thanks, I guess. I try to work out every day if I absolutely can. The best thing that I can say to everybody that is out there, if you have the ability to get up and get active, at least for even a few hours a day, definitely try to do that. The more active you are, the better you're going to feel, and the more fit you're going to be. And I'm going to use fit in very loose quotations here because there's a lot of different things when you're talking about fit. People can be fit at different sizes. People have different mobility, have different abilities when it comes to being mobile and being active and stuff like that. So you have to be able to work with your body. You have to be able to work with who you are. You have to be able to work with your mental capacity and your finances. There are a lot of different things that have to be that are involved in being fit. And I'm not going to go down the 1% route and say that the way that you're fit, the way that you can be fit is to drink green drink and wear Lululemon pants and a crushing it gym hoodie or whatever it is. That's not the best way to be fit. The best way to be fit is to just get up, get active, get outside, try to do a little bit of exercise every day. If you can't get up and you can't get active outside, do what you can from your chair, do what you can from your bed, do whatever you can to try to build yourself up and to be more healthy, right? Whatever healthy means to you, that's incredibly important. Now, as far as me, what I found works really good for me is low calorie, high protein diet. So I try to eat a lot of fish. I try to eat a lot of chicken. And I try to reduce the amount of fats and shit like that that I eat. Usually I try to keep it high protein, low calorie. So sometimes I'll use a calorie tracker. It depends on if I'm not lifting weights as often, then I'll do a calorie tracker just to try to maintain. If I'm lifting weights a lot, then I'm more likely to what?
Re-education isn't a snack. He's a full breakfast.
Oh.
Hot and wholesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
You threw me off, man.
Sorry.
that was nice. Thank you very much, commenter. So high protein, low calorie, and if you work out a lot, then you can eat more protein. Protein is really good, actually, for keeping you full. And for being able to basically metabolize that energy back into muscle growth. Whereas when you're going to eat things like chips and pretzels and shit like that, and French fries, incredibly bad, then you're going to just be giving yourself empty calories. A really good tip, I'll give you a couple of really good ones that are really easy to actually follow by. If you're going to McDonald's and you're going to order a Big Mac and fries, instead of ordering fries, order a cheeseburger, just a single cheeseburger, right? I know you want the fries, all right? I know you want the fries. I want the fries. Everybody wants the fries. But don't get the fries because the fries are the devil. They're fried in oil and they have more calories in the fries than they do in the burger. So get two burgers. If you can't afford anything else, just get two burgers. It's a little bit better than getting the fries. Don't drink your calories. Whatever you do, do not drink your calories. This is something that I tell people all the time, and it's basically the number one thing that you have to pay attention to. If you go to the gas station and you get like a jug of milk, like a milk to go. I don't know if you have that in the States, but it's like a jar, a thing of milk. It's 200 and something calories. I don't even remember what it is for a can of Coke, but it's some crazy amount of calories as well. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself because you drink 3 of those or 4 of those, you're maxed out on the amount of calories that you can have per day. If you're a man, that's something like 2,500 a day. If you're a female, if you're born female at birth, then Department of Redundancy Department. If you're born female, then you usually only need around 1,400 calories a day, depending on your body size, blah, blah, blah. Talk to your doctor, that sort of thing. But when you drink your calories, you're just sabotaging yourself in a huge way. So don't drink your calories. Order the burger instead of the fries at McDonald's, specifically at McDonald's. I haven't checked that for anywhere else. And those are 2 good tips. And do whatever you can to try to prepare meals. So I eat a lot of fish and chicken, right? It seems expensive, doesn't it? Well, not really. I can go to the grocery store. I think Walmart, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm stuck doing that too. I can sometimes get a bag of chicken breast for relatively cheap, like a whole bag of like processed chicken breast. Probably not the best for you, but it's cheap and it's something that I can afford and it's something that I know is going to actually be beneficial. When you eat chicken skin is very, very high in calories. So you try to go for the breast, definitely do that. And there was one other thing too that I do as well, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. Cans of tuna. A can of tuna is like 50 cents, something like that, 25, 50 cents. Get lots of cans of tuna. Get used to eating tuna. It's really good. It's extremely high in protein, and it's extremely low in calories. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll get a can of tuna, and I really love hot food. Spicy food is my thing. So I'll mix in a ton of like my favorite ghost pepper sauce, maybe some mustard, and I'll just mix that around and I'll just sit and eat that. I'm weird. I'm a weird motherfucker, but it's cheap. It's an easy snack. It's better than eating chips. And afterwards, if you go and you do a bunch of push-ups or lift milk jugs full of water as weights, then you're gonna get swole. And also talk to Swolitariat. Shit, that guy he does a lot of workouts and stuff, so he probably could do a little bit better on explaining routines. I know this is a little bit long and drawn out, but I'll give you a quick thing about exercising routines. Like I was saying, milk jugs. If you're right in that range where milk jugs are heavy to you, then fill up some milk jugs with water, 4-liter milk jugs. I think that's a quart in the United States with water. You can do bicep curls. You can do overhead press. You can do this one here, which I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But you can do a lot of different exercises with milk jugs. Also body weight, push-ups, sit-ups, Russian twists. Look all these things up online. Look up body weight things that you can do. And that sort of thing, because you don't have to be rich to be healthy. You just have to push yourself to do it. You just have to force yourself to have that motivation. Like Radical Reviewer said, as he was quoting from the Socialist Rifle Association, a Nazi worked out today. Did you? So next question.
Radical Reviewer said that actually.
Yeah.
In this right now.
Oh, Radical Reviewer actually said that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, RR, what's up, man?
What's your opinion on mutualism?
What's my opinion on mutualism? You know what? I'll make that into a more full video rather than just explaining it here, because there's a lot of intricacies, and I don't want to make that into a full or I don't want to just drop it on people right here, because I'll probably get some things wrong.
You have a super chat from Arlen Morrison.
Cool.
Are you currently involved with any leftist groups? If so, what kinds of things are you working on, and how would you recommend people find or start those groups?
So Arlen Morrison asked if I'm currently involved in any leftist groups. Currently, I'm not really, unfortunately, or fortunately. I've dedicated more of my time towards activism work. I don't like to call what I do activism. I like to call what I do propaganda. And I've focused more of my energy towards propaganda than I have towards activism lately. That isn't to say that I haven't involved myself in anarchist groups and stuff like that in the past. I have, but I find that my time is better spent this way, trying to bring my opinion and my ideas to as many people as I possibly can, because I feel like what I have to say, there wasn't, or at least until I came around, there wasn't a lot of people actually talking about praxis. There wasn't a lot of people actually talking about what you need to do, how you need to do it, when you need to do it, where you need to go to do it, and that sort of thing. So I figured like that was a good spot for me to jump in. That's my niche. So I jumped in and did it that way. So sorry about that. But yeah, as far as I forget what I was talking about. Can you remind me, Brianna?
Mutualism?
No, I wasn't talking about mutualism.
Oh, sorry, I don't remember. I got distracted by that too.
Okay, sorry, I got distracted by something that happened just over here.
It was a super chat.
Yeah, it was a super chat. What was it?
Anarchist groups. How would you recommend people find and start this group?
Okay, right. Yeah, sorry about that. Somebody knocked on the door and I can't answer the door because I'm in a live broadcast. So I was like, what do I do? Okay, so what do you do to go about finding anarchist groups around your area? You have to try to check out anything that you can online. So a major issue that a lot of people have when they're first getting into anarchism, when they're first trying to get into activism in general, is that leftists have this insular mentality where they don't allow a lot of new people in without knowing who they are. And it's really difficult for newbies to get in and actually get involved. It's one of the main problems that I had when I was starting to get active and involved in politics and in activism and stuff like that. So you have to be able to find a group that is willing to take you on and willing to talk to you and willing to be interested in actually giving you that information, and some like very far left down groups might not be receptive to having just random people show up. Sometimes random people show up and they're cops, right? So you want to have a certain amount of protection when it comes to that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean that there aren't groups out there that you could get yourself involved with. I'm a big proponent of food, not bombs. And it isn't to say that I agree with absolutely everything that they do. Every single organization is different, but they are a more open group that you are more able to get yourself involved in if you can't get involved in the deeper ones. And it's a good jumping off point, because if you get into a Food Not Bombs group, maybe they'll vet you a little bit. Maybe they might know somebody who can get you involved in some more, into some deeper groups. That's a way to get involved in a group. Now, you can also go ahead and start groups yourself. And I think that that's probably the best thing for you to do if you can't find a group in your area. And you can do that by getting together with your family, getting together with your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your colleagues, anybody that you can get in contact with, and see if you can talk to them and find out if they have ideas or beliefs that are similar to yours. If they do, work with them. Build ideas together, build a coalition. Basically, what you've done is you've created an affinity group. An affinity group is one of the tenets of anarchism. It's one of the main ways that we're able to use a small group of people to be able to gain control of a large audience. And affinity groups are great at that. You get affinity groups together, those affinity groups get together with other affinity groups, and you create clusters. Those clusters are able to make massive amounts of changes. So those are all things that you need to do. Like I said, look online. There are Facebook groups, anarchist, communist, socialist Facebook groups. Get involved in those as much as you possibly can. If you can't physically get to a group meeting, try to, right? Definitely try to. But if you can't physically, disabled or whatever it is, then try to get involved online as much as you possibly can. Every little bit helps. And every single person that's out there that hears this message, if you can get a little bit involved, if you can do any sort of direct action within your community, you're seriously helping the cause. You're a massive benefit. So thank you very much. And I appreciate all of you out there who do. Next question.
You have a super chat from
Nice.
Kamazots. Would you be willing to be part of a panel discussing solidarity or the lack thereof between white leftists and marginalized groups on the left?
Sorry, and that was from
Kamazots.
Kamazots gave me a super chat. Thank you very much, Kamazots. And they wondered if I would be interested in a discussion between or about white leftists. Sorry, say that one more time.
Would you be willing to be part of a panel discussing solidarity or the lack thereof between white leftists and marginalized groups on the left?
Okay, so a panel discussing solidarity between white leftist groups and minority groups and stuff like that. Would I be interested in a discussion on that? Absolutely. I would be super interested in a discussion on that. I feel like a lot of socialist groups are very white, for lack of a better word. I think that a lot of people that are in those groups happen to be white. That isn't to say that they all are. There are a lot of people that I know that are in BreadTube and that sort of thing. I believe Suck My Opinion, Angie Speaks, many other people. There people of color in there. But there aren't enough, right? And this is kind of because, and it's really sad actually, the reason why it is, it's because some white people, the majority of white people that are in the communities that are able to be speaking freely and that sort of thing, are in a privileged position to be able to do that because they have something that a lot of people of color just don't simply have. And that's time. It's just time to think about things. It's time to actually discuss topics in a way that can help people. A lot of people that are minorities, people of color, that sort of thing, they're arrested at a much higher rate. They are thrown in jail. They are abused. They're worked harder. Like they have to work more jobs. Like they just don't have the time. And a lot of their parents are thrown in fucking jail for stupid reasons. They just don't have the time to be able to gain the knowledge. Not even the knowledge. It's not even a thing about knowledge. It really isn't. It's just they don't have the time to sit down and listen to the arguments, maybe. I think that might be a large part of it. There's probably a million other reasons, and that's just me off the top of my head thinking like, what is the most obvious reason why that problem is there? I think that's probably why. But if you know a better reason, fucking leave it in the comment section down below. That was something I would really like to talk about in a longer video. And yes, I would be very interested in a discussion about that. Next question, please.
What can we do to stop infighting?
What can we do to stop infighting? The age-old question. What can we do to stop infighting? I think that a lot of the infighting that happens right now online happens because the internet is built for drama and fighting. I said this in a video the other day. YouTube and Twitter are basically constructed as organisms that are able to profit off of you fighting with one another. The more drama it is, the more clicks it will get. So there's a massive incentive for people to fight online. And what I've heard, and what I've actually experienced in real life, but what I've heard from many activists who are actually on the ground is that this is something that's kind of regulated to the internet. Most people that are active, that are actually out there, that are making a difference, that are making a serious contribution and actually trying to do direct action, they look at all of the infighting and all of the constant backbiting and bickering and all of that that's happening, and they think that it's obnoxious, and they think that we're all a bunch of sad people because we can't just get along with each other. And there just isn't that sort of fight going on in the streets. Most people are fairly unified when it comes to that. And I think this is a product of us constantly on the internet just laser focusing on our differences rather than our similarities, and focusing on our weaknesses instead of our strengths. So a lot of people ask me like questions about like, why are you anarcho-communist? Why aren't you this other form of leftist? Why aren't you that other form of leftist? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm that thing because of the reason why I told you before, but also it's not that I'm specifically choosing a label and I'm like, I'm going to stand by this specific label and everybody else with any other label is all fucking wrong. It's that I think that this label is specifically correct. I think that it's the best possible solution, but I'm going to work with everybody that I possibly can so we can get to a point where we can actually discuss this stuff. I think Vash, again, to quote him, basically, we can work together now, and then after the revolution, it'll just be brutal, bloody fighting between all of us to find out who wins, who wins in the ideological race. I don't think that's actually true. I think that we could probably come to a pretty reasonable, understandable agreement on a lot of that stuff. We're civilized. We're civilized people here. It's not a gladiator match at all. I'm an optimist. Next question.
Did you do the political compass? If so, where did you come out?
Did I do the political compass? Yeah, I did. I got a perfect score. I think I'm zero, and I'm -10, -9.5, I think is what it shows up as. And it's like almost as far down in the bottom left-hand corner, or is it on this side? Bottom left-hand corner as you possibly can be in. So yeah, that's where I landed on the political compass test.
What are your thoughts on Brexit and Yellowhammer? Getting prepared. Also, juggalos never die.
Juggalos never die. Okay, so somebody asked me a question. What is my opinion on Brexit and Yellowhammer? I don't know enough about Yellowhammer to talk on that issue. But as far as Brexit goes, I've had mixed opinions on Brexit for a while, and because I'm not a European citizen, I'm not there. I don't know enough about it to make like a definitive, to give a definitive answer about it. I remember back when it was being discussed before Brexit actually became like a real thing, a lot of leftists actually agreed with Brexit because the European Union does use a lot of predatory tactics to exploit workers in other countries, so certain countries don't make as much money, so certain countries don't have their people work as hard or whatever it is. So I know that there was a bit of a kerfuffle with that sort of thing. As far as now, shit, I don't really know. I'm leaning on the side of it probably being bad, but that comes with a lot of caveats. So you know what? That's a great question. In the comments section down below, let me know what you think about Brexit. Give me some good arguments for and against it if you have any, and then maybe I'll learn something, learn a little bit more.
Real quick, are you still down with the clown?
Real quick, am I still down with the clown? Oh wait, yeah, I am. Juggalo for life. Ooh, like somebody's gonna take all of the shit that I've said throughout the years and just cut it into clips. I'm gonna look just so terrible. It'll be glorious.
Why do you think you could go straight to a stateless, classless society after the revolution?
Okay, so yeah,
There's more to it.
Okay. Go
How
ahead.
can that kind of society be stable without a transitionary state?
This is frustrating. Okay, so somebody asked, how can you go directly to a stateless, classless society before having a transitionary state? This is something that I actually want to do a more in-depth video on, because it's something that's a really, really deep topic. And every time I talk about any of this stuff, I end up getting attacked by so many people with so many different ideas about it. So why do I think that it's necessary to go directly to a stateless, classless society? Again, like I said before, anarcho-communism is interesting in that there are a lot of different ways that you can go about instituting it. And though many, I would even say, or at least a lot of anarcho-communists believe in not having any sort of transitionary state, there are a lot that do. So that's a very complicated subject. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a bit of a misnomer. And I think that it misunderstands the whole idea of anarchism in the first place. And it kind of puts this thought into people's heads that anarchists want to do this crazy thing that's absolutely impossible. One thing that I would like to say, and you know what, I'm going to make this into a longer video because that's a deep question and I can't answer it all here. There's no way. But one thing that that I want to ask people that ask me that sort of comment is, do you honestly think that a transitionary period is going to help anything? So instead of going from this terrible thing that we have now, this authoritarian regime that we have now, instead of going from that to a stateless, classless society where everybody's equal and we can all work together, instead of going from that to that, you want to go to a slightly less authoritarian regime. How has that worked out for you in the past? Probably not well. Next question.
Do you plan on doing any more vids on practical and effective praxis that people can engage in?
Yeah, am I planning on doing any more praxis videos, practical things that people can engage in? Absolutely. I have a ton of different videos that I have on the go within my praxis series that I've been working towards trying to create. So, and I actually have one that's on my computer right now, about 150 million miles away, that I've been working on recently that hopefully is going to give everybody, if you're even stuck behind a computer screen and you can't get out there and do physical activism, then I have a video coming out soon that'll kind of give you some information on how you can help straight from your computer chair. In fact, Granny sitting in her old folks home can even be part of the revolution with this idea that I have. So that'll be coming out sometime soon. Next question.
What are your thoughts on libertarian fascism?
Somebody asked, what are my thoughts on libertarian fascism? It's a bit impossible. Like it's not necessarily impossible. Okay, that's another deep question. So libertarianism is basically the idea that you have as much freedom as possible. I like to think of libertarianism as being akin to basically like anarchism. Now, if I am getting this wrong, message me. But I like to think of it as being sort of like anarchism, or if not another word for anarchism. And fascism is directly opposed to basically everything that anarchists believe in. They believe in an authoritarian state. They believe in ultranationalism. They believe in strong borders. They believe in ethno-nationalism sometimes. All of these things, if you notice, are all unjustified hierarchies that come about through racial sciences or through chauvinism or through other indefensible positions. So I don't think that it's a real thing. I don't think that it could be a real thing. You can sort of have like an anarchistic Nazi, sort of, because some of the tenets of Nazism have to do with like the Jewish conspiracy and like racial superiority. And even though that's an unjustified hierarchy, you can kind of make a bit of a stretch and say that you could almost do that anarchistically, but like straight up fascism, that's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense, at least the way I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Go ahead.
Ready?
Yep.
Why don't you extend your compassion to animals and stop eating meat?
Why don't I extend my compassion to animals and stop eating meat? So I respect vegans in that I think that they are for themselves trying to do the best that they possibly can in a situation where it seems a little bit hopeless. But I feel as though, actually, a person that talks about this that's way smarter than me about this issue is Mexi. If you get a chance, subscribe to Mexi because she knows so much more about this than I do. And she is actually, I believe that she is still a vegan. And she kind of falls on the same wavelength as I do on this, where veganism is really good. I mean, like, if you can do it, bless your heart, God bless your soul, because that you have to be an empathetic person to look at the way things are going with animal cruelty and that sort of thing, and decide for yourself, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. But unfortunately, I feel as though there is a liberal element to veganism that basically blames the consumer rather than blaming the actual problem. Now, everybody, I wish that we would slow down on our consumption of meat and meat products. I think that would be a great thing. I think that we could find alternatives to meat products, or at least reduce the amount that we eat. That would be fantastic. But the problem isn't within the consumer. The problem is within the system. The problem is within factory farming and the way that we treat animals in this society. We are like a fucking cancer to this world, and we destroy massive swaths of land and entire ecosystems so we can grow cattle in places that they don't fucking that they should never be in, and like have like chicken farms and shit, and like cut their fucking trigger warning, cut chickens' beaks off and stuff like that so they don't peck each other. Like, the things that go on is so cruel, it's so inhuman, that it's disgusting to me. And though I try as much as I can to locally source all of my groceries, all of the food that I can, I currently trade back and forth with farmers for eggs, for meat, with hunters for deer and different game animals and stuff like that, game birds and so forth. So I try to ethically source all of my meat as I possibly can, but I can't. I am literally just a regular person, right? Like, I'm not rich. I have very little money. So I end up buying food from McDonald's and Walmart. And it's just kind of the way things are. And yes, there are a lot of vegan alternatives to meat. But unfortunately, I feel as though, just like any very specific dietary restriction that you're putting on yourself, you have to have the ability to go to the doctor, get your blood tested. You have to make sure that you're getting the right amount of nutrients, the right amount of fiber and protein and vitamins and this sort of thing. And sometimes people that are in unprivileged situations don't have the resources to do that. They just simply don't. They can't maybe afford to go to the doctor, or maybe they can't afford, even time-wise, to make those meals. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I love the idea of veganism, but unfortunately, it more or less, when you moralize about it, it blames the individual more than the system. Next question.
Christopher Sabo said, "Are you mad at me for making a video at you the other day?"
Christopher Zabo asked if I'm mad at him for making a video at me. I didn't know you did. Hi, Chris. Everybody subscribe to Christopher Zabos' channel. They are fucking fantastic, and I love their videos so much. And I missed that one. send it to me and I will watch it and I will enjoy every minute of it. I hope it's very critical. I love it when people say things that are critical of my work. It's the best way for me to learn, and it's the best way for me to get better at what I do, and that sort of thing. So hi, Chris. Please, you guys, subscribe.
Would you? I can't read this. It's...
Oh, he says no. I deleted it.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I can just barely see your comment just coming up on my cell phone screen. Oh, that's okay. Check out his channel regardless, or their channel regardless. It's really good.
Will we be seeing more of the dirtbag and SJW characters in the future?
Will you see more of the dirtbag and SJW characters in the future? So she's my assistant is talking about the cowboy character and the scholarly scholar that I had in my ContraPoints video and another video as well. Yeah, absolutely. I love those characters. I think they're hilarious. And the interesting thing about those characters is that a lot of the time, and people have said this to me on Twitter, they're like, oh, you jump back and forth between being an SJW and a dirtbag leftist. I think that those are nonsensical terms. I think that as human beings, we make decisions about topics based on that topic, not based on what we have labeled ourselves as, right? And I'm that way with everything. So when I hear an argument from a more SJW leaning YouTuber like say Thought Slime, and he makes a compelling argument, or they make a compelling argument, and it's interesting to me, and I agree with it, like the video that Thought Slime did, I believe, just recently. Very interesting, very thought-provoking. I really enjoyed it. I loved hearing that take. And it was a little bit of a softer take than something that I usually would have been thinking about, but I enjoyed it. It was great. It was a good take. Didn't agree with everything, but I agreed with a lot of it. Or if another group like, say, Chapo Trap House, for some reason, everybody hates them and calls them dirtbags. I never really understood that. But if they make a good point, I listen to them. I take what they say, and I think some things are good, some things are bad. So when they make a good argument, and when either side makes a good argument, I like to put those arguments into the mouths of those individual characters, because that's kind of like my internal dialogue when it comes to these things, because it's like, yeah, I do agree with you, but that's a good point too. And then hopefully we can kind of build a broader conversation about it afterwards, or I'm able to at least give my take on it once I've fully understood both sides of the subject, or at least to an extent that I can understand them. Next question.
If you could only pick one thing, what do you hope that your work accomplishes?
If I could only pick one thing, what do I hope that my work accomplishes? I hope to plant seeds. That is the whole reason why I'm here. I started this channel because I felt that as an individual, in the place that I lived, with the organizations that are around me, that I was basically helpless when it came to making an actual difference. I thought that even though there were groups that are around that I could join, that I could get involved with, I felt like I wasn't able to fully use all of the talents that I had to be able to push the messages that I feel like I could push. And I'm almost in this unique situation where I've done YouTube for so many years that I feel it's kind of a natural thing for me to do. Just stand and talk to people in front of stand and talk in front of a bunch of people live or on video is something that I'm kind of familiar with. It's something that I'm kind of natural at. Obviously, this is a bad example as I'm tongue-tangulated and stumbling all over my words, but that's the thing that I think that I'm best at, and that's the area that I want to focus on. Because I think that that's very necessary as far as me helping. This is my way of going about being not an activist. I don't think that I'm an activist. I think I'm a propagandist, but I feel like I can encourage people to get out there and be activists and actually be revolutionaries. And I think that's really important.
How would you recommend bread-pilling right libertarians and swinging them towards anarchocommunism? I know I used to be a right lib, but I don't know how I'd go about shifting others.
Somebody asked how I can convince a right libertarian to become an anarcho-communist. You know what? I already answered this question a little while ago when I was explaining how you can convert somebody from being a right-winger to being an anarcho-communist as well. And it's not something that you can just magically do. It's not something you can snap your fingers and just automatically do. It's something that takes a long time. It's something that takes a lot of conversations. And it's something that you might not be able to do yourself, but somebody else might be able to talk to that person and change their mind. I would suggest, who was it that asked that question? Do you have it anymore?
Yeah, I have it. Labor Wave.
Labor Wave. Oh, Labor Wave Initiative?
Oh yeah. Well, just Labor Wave. That's the
Labor. Okay, if they're the same Labor Wave that I think that they're on Twitter.
They're very active on this chat.
Oh, okay, yeah. That if they are the same Labor Wave that I'm thinking of, check them out on Twitter. I've been wanting to give them a shout out for their Twitter account because they're hilarious. They do a lot of really good memes. Okay, sorry. So the way that you do it is if you if you want to talk to me in the DMs, or if you want to message me on Twitter and ask me about specific situations, I can give you more information about those specific situations if you talk to me about those. Labor Wave Initiative. Yeah, follow Labor Wave Initiative on Twitter. Their tweets are fucking hilarious. And if you have any questions about how to red pill people, come talk to me directly. Message me on Twitter or DM me. Sometimes I'm a little bit backed up, but I'll try to respond to you as soon as I can, and hopefully we can work together, because it's a situational thing, right? And it's something that takes time, so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Next question.
What is anarcho-syndicalism?
What is anarcho-syndicalism? Okay, so anarcho-syndicalism is basically, syndicalism is another way of saying unions. So an anarcho-syndicate would be a non-hierarchical union of people. Now, a lot of people ask, is there a difference between anarcho-communists and anarcho-syndicalists? Sort of, but there's a lot of overlap. And I feel like a lot of anarcho-syndicalism is more or less how you go about things, and anarcho-communism is the things that you want to go about. So I think that they kind of tie into one another. I think they work really well with one another. And different people have different explanations and different definitions for each one of those words. So the way the definitions always work, everybody's going to have a different opinion on everything. So yes, can anarcho-syndicalism be completely different from anarcho-communism? Sure, but they have a lot of overlap and they work really well together. I believe in syndicalism.
How do we get our non-political / ignorant friends motivated to our viewpoints?
How do we get our non-political / ignorant, politically ignorant friends motivated about our viewpoints?
Motivated to our viewpoints.
Motivated to our viewpoints.
Right. That's all it says.
Complicated question. Again, it's a situational thing, right? What I usually like to do is I like to try to find something that I can relate to that person on and build off of there. So for example, my dad. Hey, I was gone and now I'm back. Hopefully everything is still okay. Okay, there we go. Anyway, so like I said, my dad is very much a conservative, a right-leaning person, but he's extremely anti-government. Like, he hates the government. So it didn't take much for me to talk to him about how, conservatives are part of the government, and they're just as bad as the liberals, and it took a while, and he started to really internalize that shit, and he was like, yeah, we need to do something about this. We need to fight these bastards. And now he's on my side. Motherfucker wants to hang an anarchist flag outside the house. So it took a long time to get that to that point too. It took months to get to that point. So it's something that takes constant work. If they're your friend, you care about them a lot, then it's something that you are interested in doing. If you want to change their mind, then the onus is on, well, the onus isn't on you, but it's you can go ahead and do that, but it will take a lot of effort. Next question. And we've been doing this for just about 2 hours now. So how many questions do we have left?
I think we should go till for 30 more minutes or so.
30 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you manage to stay so neutral while other leftists are at each other's throats?
How do I manage to stay so neutral while other leftists are at each other's throats? So I'm just like anybody else. I can't say that I'm 100% neutral on everything. I listen to everybody's argument as much as I possibly can, and then after that, I try to explain it the best that I can in my own way and I view things through my own lens, right? So sometimes I take offense to things that people are saying that aren't even necessarily about me, but I'm able to stay sort of neutral, I think, because I've spent a lot of time listening to people. And like I was saying before, listening to people is extremely important. It isn't the best idea for you to jump out and just give your fucking take before anybody has a chance to explain their own, though I do that sometimes to varying degrees of success. But it's important to actually sit back and listen to other people's arguments and find out why they believe things. Why people believe things is far more important than what they even believe. Because, and it's something that I got from Matt Dillahunty from the Atheist Experience. He'd always ask the question, what do you believe and why? And I love that. I think that that's one of the main things that I like to do too, is ask people what they believe and why, and then listen, find out why, and then make a decision after that, make a determination on what my beliefs are through that. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm not perfect at all. I am super flawed. And I see everything through my own lens, just like everybody does. But I also know that I see things through my lens. So when I realize that I try to step back and I try to see things through their lens. Next question, please.
Hey, Aaron, from The Fork I Want. Sorry if you get this a lot, but what are your thoughts on progressives like David Pakman and Kyle Kulinski?
Who is this from?
The Fork I Want.
The Fork I Want asked, what are my thoughts on progressives like David Pakman and Kyle Kulinski? I love Kyle Kulinski. He's a soc dem, yeah, a social democrat. So he is still a capitalist. So we have a large amount of disagreements when it comes to economic policies and that sort of thing. But I feel like his heart's in the right place. I feel like he knows politics really well. He's one of the most well-informed people politically that I've ever seen. And I find myself binge watching his channel, like one after the other, after the other, after the other. He has a lot of bad takes, a lot of really, really bad takes. But he also has a lot of really good takes, and I find them interesting. And when it comes to politics, I feel like he knows things more than other people because it's important to him. He's passionate about it. It's not just something that he does, right? He doesn't just sit down each day and go, ugh, I can't believe I have to do another day of this news shit. He really likes it, and he's active. He's involved in getting groups together. He even got a hold of the Serfs a little while ago and did a video with them. The Serfs are awesome, by the way. Fucking subscribe to their channel. And that like just shows that Kyle actually cares about what leftists are saying, even if they're further left than him. Kyle talks a lot about how he runs in leftist circles, and he does. He actually does listen to what a lot of people have to say about a lot of different topics, and he's not blind to the socialist ideas. I would say that he has an incredibly sparse understanding of anarchism, and in the past he's made wildly ridiculous takes about socialism. I think it was socialism or communism specifically. That I thought were just terrible, but I think that he's generally really good. Pakman, seen less of him, know less of him. What I have seen of him, I've seen that he's been more establishment leaning. I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I remember a little while back, he did like an interview with like Dave Rubin or some like one of these like disgusting like wannabe centrist pieces of crap. And just makes me spit. But he like was really easy on him, and after that I was like, no thanks, and I didn't watch any more of his channel. Like, whatever. It's not really my thing. I'm not I'm progressive in like the broad spectrum of things, but I'm not a progressive. I'm an anarcho-communist. I'm a socialist. So yeah, if you're really good like Kyle, I'll watch all your videos. If you're middling like Pakman, not a big fan. Next question.
How should one approach telling and educating establishment liberal parents about anarcho-communism?
Okay, how would you go about say that again?
Sorry, it's worded a little odd.
Oh, okay.
How should one approach telling and educating establishment liberal parents about anarcho-communism?
So how would you educate liberal parents on anarcho-communism? Interesting question, difficult question, because parents are usually very set in their ways. And the problem with liberals is that they have this complex where they think they are so fucking right about everything that they just refuse to listen to anybody else. It's not to say that conservatives don't too, but conservatives are more like in your, like, how can I explain this? Conservatives are overt, right? They are in your face about the things that they hate, and they're going to tell you whether they're right or they're wrong, this certain thing, right? And they'll fucking fight to the death for it. Liberals are a little bit different in that they're more wishy-washy, but I feel whereas conservatives usually base their ideals on things like race or nationalism, that sort of thing. Liberals base their arguments very much on class, right? So liberals are extremely classist. And I feel like they're almost more difficult to get through to than conservatives can be. But that's my experience. Different people have different experiences because they're not me. And I have an easier time talking to conservatives. So when I talk to a liberal, I always feel as though they're fucking lying to me. Like I always feel like they have several layers of bullshit hidden in, like that they're standing behind, almost like they're a secret racist or a secret conservative that they just try to act as though they aren't. As far as trying to convince your liberal parents about things about anarcho-communism, it's the same, I would imagine it's the same way as what I did with my dad, right? With my own father, is that I talked to him a lot. I listened to what he had to say. I had conversations with him, and we worked together to come to a position that was post-capitalist. I ask a lot of leading questions, right? I know because I am intensely in arguments all the time online, unfortunately, in like my comments and stuff like that, not arguments, but discussions. I understand where most people are coming from because I've heard their arguments before, right? So it's just another one of those again, right? So I know where people are going for the most part because I've done this for so long that I can ask leading questions and get people to a point of where they're like, oh, I understand. Now that's leading questions, not misleading questions. I don't want to lie to people either. I want them to come to conclusions on their own, but I want to guide them along that path and hopefully give them some information along the way. So yeah. Next question.
I'm a young lefty that is still in school. What are some issues that public education has and which ones have affected you?
So this person is a young lefty who's still in school and they want to know sorry, say that one more time. I keep doing this with every one of the questions now. Sorry about that, guys.
I'm a young lefty that is still in school. What are some issues that public education has and which ones affected you? So
what issues does public education have and what ones affected me? The biggest issue that public education has is that it is ran by a government body that is overwhelmingly lobbied by corporate interest. And when that happens, it starts to lose funding. I've talked about this many times in the past. In public schools, you are basically at the whims of whatever funding you're able to get through the government. And sometimes that's even local funding in the area of that school. So if there's a school that's in an area of low income people, that school is going to do worse than a school that's in an area of high income people. And that's just the way it is. They defund and privatize. Once they defund government organizations like schools, like that sort of thing, they will inevitably put in private schools in its place as an alternative. And they can say, hey, look at how amazing these private schools are compared to these public schools. These public schools are doing terrible, even though they're made to do terrible because they're underfunded, because the people that own the private schools are lobbying the government to underfund them. That's kind of how that goes. As far as problems that I've had in the public school system, yeah, I did go to public school. Yeah, it was fucking terrible. And the problems that I had was I had an incredibly hard time learning because the teachers weren't interested in teaching because they weren't getting like paid enough. Like I went to a very rough school in a very ghetto, very low income area. And yeah, the teachers there, they had to deal with all kinds of things. They had to deal with death threats and people bringing knives and shit and threatening beating people up in the hallways and stuff like that. It was a very rough situation. So yeah, they were able to teach, but they were barely able to teach. And when you're in an area where everybody is underfunded, everybody is very poor, people are fucking miserable. People are more angry. People start more fights because you're hungry, because you're poor, because you're depressed, because life fucking sucks, because you're doing drugs because life sucks, right? And it ends up creating this like self-perpetuating system of like just shittiness where things get worse and worse and it snowballs. So like, yeah, I had an incredibly hard time growing up and going to school and learning things. I don't think I've learned anything. I've never learned more in my entire life than after I got out of school and started learning myself. I'm an autodidact. Only autodidacts know what that word means because they made it up. And that basically means that I'm self-taught. So pretty much everything that I do know, I learned through my own research. It reminds me of this meme that I seen once. There was like, what was it? It was like a badger or a ferret or something, and it was eating garbage along with like 6 different cats. And all of the cats, it said like academic, 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 academic. And then on the badger one, it was like anarchist. And the caption was basically getting information from the garbage is just as good as getting information from anywhere else. Basically, like you can get information, good information from the internet, and you don't need to have that scholarly degree proving that you have that knowledge. The only good that that degree does is prove to other bougie motherfuckers that you're smart. So.
Are you for or against platforming Nazis from social media or giving speeches?
Am I for or against platforming Nazis on social media or giving speeches? Great question. Big question. I'm a little bit on the fence on this one. So here's my argument, all right? When you do platform Nazis, what happens? You give everybody the chance to hear their ideas. And even though you're giving oxygen to those ideas, some people are going to listen to those and again, sunlight to those ideas. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, and most people are going to see those and think, oh, that's terrible. Nazis are horrible. But there is a percentage of people that are going to listen to those ideas and think that they're good. And those people, I don't want to give them that ability. I don't want people to sit there and listen to a Nazi talk and think, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jewish question. Oh, obviously, yeah, Jews. I don't want that to happen. So I don't think that it's a good idea to platform Nazis. I have no interest in platforming Nazis, and I've never done that on this channel. But what happens when you don't platform Nazis? Well, then they use that against you and they start screaming, hey, this is our freedom of speech. This is our freedom of speech. Look at these radical, crazy left-wingers not allowing us to say anything at all. Just the slightest words that we might say are so offensive to them that they crumble and fall apart. These little SJW cucks. They can't handle a little bit of word or just a few words. So they really have a way of playing both sides and kind of maybe not winning, but definitely making it feel as though they're winning on both sides. I've heard arguments in the past that have said that, oh, well, if the fascists are complaining that we're not platforming them, excuse me, then obviously that's working and it is fucking them up, right? If you don't platform fascists and all the fascists are mad that you're not platforming them, clearly they wanted to be platformed, and not platforming them is really making them angry and dissuading them and that sort of thing. So like, yeah, it's another one of those things. The SJWs say this, the dirtbags say this, and I'm sitting in the middle going, both of those are interesting points. I hope that we can somehow come to a conclusion on that one, because neither one of you have addressed the concerns that I've had for those two problems. So if you do have answers to those problems that I brought up, leave them in the comments. I'd like to know them. Next question.
Would you consider pushing to create an independent website in case YouTube ever kicks us off RedTube, a place where we can regroup? We are anti-capitalist, and it could happen someday.
So somebody is asking if I think that it's a good idea that we push to spread out our breadtubiness, to basically spread our message on other platforms rather than just YouTube. Yeah, absolutely. I'm old school and I barely know how to I barely know how to check my email. So I use YouTube because it's something that I've always known how to use, but I really want to get involved in things like Twitch. I want to get involved in other social media as well. I heard, I believe it's Mastodon is a good one. Yes, I know, boomer. Whatever. But there are a lot of really good social media platforms that we should be getting involved in, and definitely get involved in all of those. And if you're smart and you know how to do that sort of stuff, get in contact with me, because I would absolutely love to learn how to put my videos on another platform. And if fuck it, if you can help me with that, that'd be fantastic, because I have a lot of shit on my plate right now. Next question.
How can we help unite the left, especially given how sectarianism is a massive hurdle in the left?
How can we help the left because sectarianism is a massive hurdle in the left? Yeah, sectarianism is incredibly damaging to the left. It's something that I rail against all the time, and it's something that we need to absolutely be fighting against. Man, it's such a frustrating, complicated subject, because when you say to people you think that it's a great idea that you have tactical unity and we work together to be able to fight capitalism, then people stand up and say, well, you know what are we going to do? We're just going to sell out all of our beliefs and all of our and everything that we believe in, just so we can invite fascists into our group. That's not going to help anything at all. And yeah, I get that position. I definitely do. I understand that. It's a good argument. Also, though, we have to also destroy capitalism. So can we do both? Yeah, I think we can do both. I think that we should be focusing on both of those things. And oh man, that is such a complicated subject. Thought Slime recently made a really good video about it. I think it was his last video. I keep talking about it because it's a good video. Makes a lot of really good points. He makes a good point about that. And then I also think I made a really good point about that in my Moralizing Left video. So watch that video, watch Thought Slime's video, and come to me afterwards and let me know what you think about both of those. And what did I get wrong? What did he get wrong? Let's find out. Let's make this into a real conversation that doesn't just start as a conversation, but actually ends with a conclusion. That'd be nice.
How did you unlearn the toxic ideas you were taught, and what kinds of thought changes would you recommend to people trying to do so?
How did I unlearn the toxic ideas that I used to think, and how can I help people to change their toxic beliefs as well, is basically what my assistant just said. So how did I unlearn those toxic beliefs? I unlearned them because I had the ability to meet people that had a difference of opinion, and I gave them the time to explain it to me. And I honestly listened. And after that, I started to change my mind. And that's the only way that you can change other people's minds. And that's the only way that you can change your mind as well, is by actually listening to other people and taking in what they say. So, next question.
Do you know what council communism is? I consider myself an anarcho-communist, but when I took the left values test, it said I lean more towards council communism. Can you explain it?
Wow. So the question is, what is council communism? They took a political test and they landed on council communism. I've heard the term before, but I honestly don't know enough about that specific thing to make a definitive answer about that. So I'm not going to give you a definitive answer on that one right now. Check out what Wikipedia says, because that's the best thing that I could possibly do at this current point. Council communism. Why does that sound so familiar? It's gonna bother me, and then somebody's gonna leave a message in the comments below, and they're gonna be like, "Council communism is this thing, you daft son of a bitch." I'm gonna be like, "Oh, fuck, I got it wrong." Okay, whatever. Next question.
How would mom and pop businesses function in an anarchist society?
Mom and pop businesses, how would they function in an anarchist society? Great question. Easier question. That's very simple. If there is just a mom and a pop, then they are owners and controllers of their means of production, right? As soon as they start hiring employees, then those employees wouldn't be working for them, they'd be working with them. Now, the way that they organize how much benefit each person gets from that company is going to be specifically based on how that organization decides to divvy up the goods, right? Every communist or every anarchist situation is different. But as soon as you hire an employee or you hire another person that's going to be working with you, then you're sharing the wealth with them. That's basically how it works. There is no person at the top that dictates to everybody. You basically work together. And if you have enough employees that it looks like you might need to start doing elections to find out who the manager would be, then that's what you do, right? And if you're a mom and a pop and you've worked your entire lives to create this this business, absolutely fantastic. People at the end of that might look at all of your years of hard work and say, you know what, take the rest of your time off. You can retire. We'll make sure that, and like in an anarcho-communist society, you wouldn't have to worry about money and that sort of thing. But for the sake of this argument, let's say you take your time off. We'll make sure that you are well taken care of for the rest of your life. We'll continue with this business, and everything is going to be hunky dory. But if it gets to the point where this mom and pop think that they're on high, they're almighty, and they no longer need to work anymore, and they can just reap all of the benefits from everybody working for them, well, it doesn't really matter if you made that company or not. You're basically a leech at that point, and you're not helping. So, outski. Anyway, next question.
It's time.
Is it time?
Yeah.
Oh, it's time to go. Okay, so, and I didn't get any more super chats?
No.
I thought I had one more that came up.
They were just donations.
Oh, they're just donating. Oh, well, thank you very much. Anybody that gave me just a donation, that's very generous of you. Thank you very much. When I say that every dollar does help fund this show, I'm not kidding, because yeah, I don't make any kind of money. So this was really helpful. Thank you very much for everybody showing up and watching. It's like 100 people watching. That's very cool. Anyway, if you do get a chance, please check me out on Patreon. Every dollar really does help fund this show. And thanks for watching, guys.